Okay, so now I'll just introduce our two speakers. So the first speaker is Isabella Moeller, and she's an academic who's done research on a variety of issues, one of which is the environmental impacts of digital technology and the internet in particular. And then she's going to go first, and she's going to actually talk via Skype. And then we'll have Jack Qiu, who has done, I'll maybe say a bit more about his work when it's his turn. I think that's what I needed to say. So maybe Luke, now's your moment to...
Keep your fingers crossed your Wi-Fi.
Okay. So we're dependent on Skype for this, which...
So you're anti-tech, but there's a laptop and there's
but we are not anti-technology, and we're against technocracy. So hi, Nina. Can we maximise her?
That's as far as she's going to get, when she's that way, unfortunately.
Okay, all right. Sorry?
On the screen?
No, we can't. Unfortunately, we don't have the right connector between the laptop and the projector. Unfortunately, so you're going to have to bear with this, but hopefully, start talking for a minute. Let's see what the sound sounds like.
Okay. So this would be me talking. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sound like Mickey Mouse, but never mind.
All right, fine. And you're recording, and we're good to go. Okay. So Nina, you're on.
Okay. I'll try. Please. I think I can actually not really hear you. So if especially the people that I can see now, the people sitting on red chairs, if there is any problem with the sound, if you could sort of raise your hands, then I can see that and I can stop and we can discuss what's going on. Okay, so hi, I'm Nina. I'm an anthropologist, and I actually work currently and most of my academic sort of existence with indigenous peoples in the Amazon in Ecuador. And currently I'm looking at the erosion of subsistence as a viable life way, as a viable way of life. And so that's quite different maybe from the topic, you might think, from the topic that we're discussing today, but there are obvious connections. And so I'm going to present something that is not my main research. It's a common interest that I share with and in fact through my partner Martin, which is about the materiality of the so-called immaterial. So that starts from intellectual property really, and the material that is really underlying that property relation to the industrial hardware structures that are underpinning the area of the cloud, the internet. And I've been asked by Dave to talk a little bit today, basically to update an article that I wrote together with Martin on the material impact of the internet. That was, I think, in 2011. It was published in The Land. I believe that there is some copies out. And the idea was maybe to sort of update some of the numbers and kind of make that case again here in front of you. However, reading this through, I realized that while it still makes some crucial basic points, in today's context, the conceptions that are really underlying that article are pretty outdated. So when you read it, it seems like there is this sort of massive hardware infrastructure, the internet, a network of computers that via cables, server farms, switches, antennas, and routers you can choose to use or maybe not use. And I think that one of the key points that I would like to make today is that we're really beyond that, and that the digital world, or ICT, information communication technologies, have infused basically all of human existence, almost even into such places as the Amazon rainforest. There's really very few spaces that are left untouched by it, and so it's very difficult, if not impossible, to measure the environmental impact of this. How are we to do this? We're really basically looking today at our entire civilizing process of the current civilization, and there's so many contradictory ways of calculating the impact. And I've been, looking in the run-up to this talk, I've been trying to find some numbers, and there is loads of contradictory information out there. So I'm hoping just relatively briefly today to present a more qualitative picture, I think, of what I feel is going on, and maybe some leads for you to then look further into this. And I'm also really excited about a Jack's talk afterwards, because I think this will get us deeper into the flesh of what is going on with ICT and the digital. So I want to talk about four key points or areas, and the first one. The first one is really about extraction and resource use. I'm sorry, I'm having to sort of go through my notes here and there a little bit. Basically, there is such a thing as rare earth metals, which you have probably all heard about. These are metals that are very important for microchip production, and the extraction of these metals has displaced vast populations, and hundreds of thousands of Chinese peasants. And in Central Africa, one can say that the so-called Great War of Africa between 1998 and 2003 was in part fueled by the industrial need for tantalum. In China, peasants have been displaced by scrambles for neodymium, which is a key mineral that is used in wind turbines, headphones, and hard disks, and has also caused massive pollution. And so the war in Africa wasn't maybe created by the need for this mineral, or not caused by the need for this mineral, but it was certainly exacerbated. And big companies like Nokia and Sony were involved in scrambles over land, and still are, in order to get to these absolutely pivotal minerals. I also want to say a few words on there's not only the extraction, there's also, of course, the production process of microchips now in particular that I'm focusing on. But don't forget, there is also the optic fiber cables, copper cables, the plastic boxes, all of these things that the actual internet is based on, that need to be produced, resources need to be extracted for. So the first semiconductor transistor was created in 1947, and the semiconductor devices have since then come to play a fundamental role in modern economies and societies. And there's really a massive industry that has now developed to meet the demand for these ubiquitous devices that are, in everything. They are now in your fridges, they are in cars, they are in some garments, they are in all the things that make the civilization as we know it work as it does currently. The semiconductor industry uses hundreds, even thousands of chemicals, many in significant quantities and many of them toxic. Emissions of these chemicals have potential impacts on air, water, and soil systems, as well as obviously occupational risks for line workers. Some of the substances used by the industry are gases contributing to global warming, such as the PFCs. They're used in etching processes and they are potent greenhouse gases. And in fact, this is estimates from 1993, so this is a long time ago. The global warming impact of the PFC emissions in manufacturing is of a similar magnitude of the global warming impact of the electricity used by the industry. So that's massive and sort of doubles, you know, some of the carbon emissions that are sometimes talked about when people discuss energy use and hence sort of environmental impact of the ICT industry. But there is also, of course, so-called secondary environmental impacts associated with supplying the main raw materials, namely the chemicals, but also the energy, water, and silicon. And so consumption of water in semiconductor fabrication is also massive. I think I have a number here, but again, you know, how exactly that is calculated is also a question. But 32,000 liter for a 32 megabyte chip, which places a burden on local water supplies. And I think in Taiwan there was a drought in which pitted high-tech firms against farmers in competition for limited water resources. So this is something that we'll obviously be seeing a lot more of. There is also, optic fiber cables are being dug into. I was out in Ecuador in the Amazon most recently until May, and there is just everything is being updated. So the internet is being distributed into like 2 towns in the Amazon, but nonetheless. And so optic fiber cables were being dug in, and this has sort of just made me like think about what this actually means. I mean, there is glass involved, there's plastic involved, there's things like Kevlar involved, which is this material that is produced in an absolutely crazy way with acid and like very, very high temperature. And so for me, just this very image of our planet, being sort of suffused everywhere and under the earth and in the sky, and the microwaves of this civilization that is very that is now running on the digital. That is just the image that I would like to bring across. There was an initiative called Green Touch, a consortium of in the ICT industry consortium that got together to improve energy efficiency. For example, they had one of their initiatives was called Factor 1000, and they aimed to decrease 1,000-fold energy use by 2015. But this reduction of energy consumption was all based on replacing the entire infrastructure. So what would happen is, like, yes, maybe some of the material, some of the actual machines could be made more energy efficient, but it would also mean that you would have to produce these new machines, like say semiconductors or smaller different kind of switches or better cables, and you have to produce them, and then you have to put them in with machinery. You have to dig the actual channels where to put them in, and they have to be produced and so forth. So this just to highlight the intensity of the extraction production processes. Also, not to forget the waste products that are being created. I haven't been able to find any relevant numbers, but if you think about just the very waste products of the actual mobile phones that we're using, and the way many people are renewing their computers, and in fact many companies have to renew their computers, and how even software systems are often tied in with the hardware, and so you can't actually update the software if you need to buy a new system once there are any problems. The second main point I want to make, then I've already touched upon it, is about energy use. And so since the 1980s, there has been a bit of a discussion in university and academic discussion on the relationship between ICT and energy consumption. And there have been sort of two main perspectives. The first one is talk about how ICT reduces energy consumption, makes all sorts of processes more efficient in factories and homes through smart meters. So that is, I think, what Dave is talking about, this idea of the immaterial, and actually, we will be less reliant on industrial processes and, so-called dirty energies. On the other hand, it became clear pretty quickly that ICT itself uses a lot of electricity, and so work has begun on reducing the economic and ecological costs. And we all know people like Elon Musk who are inventing, incredibly energy efficient new technologies like photovoltaic roof tiles, and that can then produce the energy to run your car, and so there is this whole paradigm out there of vastly improved energy efficient civilization, but that is very much still our civilization, and that will be based nonetheless on a lot of these productive processes that will need to take place somewhere, and a lot of waste that is created that will need to go somewhere, and a lot of chemicals that are used in the process that will also pollute. So just some numbers, and they are again not the newest, partly just because it's very difficult to find them, but it has been estimated that about 10% of global consumption of all energy is consumed by computers and by end users, and so energy consumption for server farms worldwide has doubled from the period from 2000 to 2005. So I don't want to know what has happened there now. And already for some time, and again also in the article in The Land, it was clear that basically ICT, or worldwide internet usage, not ICT as a whole, but the internet, is equivalent to the aviation industry. So all these ideas of that it is somehow greener maybe to speak on Skype rather than to travel down to London, I think really have to be questioned, because there is not just in terms of energy, but also just in terms of the very material production of the things that are needed to make some of these new developments possible. I want to, now I've sort of mentioned some numbers and so forth, but actually I want to point out what is sometimes called the Jevons paradox. Jevons paradox is a paradox in economics where the idea is that technological process increases. Well, while technological process increases the resource use efficiency, the rate of consumption also grows because demand rises. So that means that actually total energy use is always goes up, because as technology advances, demand increases, and so it never, the technological progress of better efficiency doesn't actually lead to lower consumption. And that goes together with some different statistics that show, I have, by the way, references for all of these things, so if people are interested, I can hand them out later or through email, ideally. There is statistics that show that total projected energy use is likely to rise. So even if renewable energy is going to increase as a share of total energy use, and so say coal is going to decrease, the relative share of coal is going to decrease, in total the energy use is going to increase. And this is to do with the very fact that more and more technology is being made efficient, so it becomes cheaper, so more people want it. And as the third important point that I would like to make is on what is sometimes called inclusion in the electric paradigm. And this is often framed as a question of justice. Now, for example, there is an initiative, a collaborative initiative by the UN with the World Bank that it's called Sustainable Energy for All, which claims that more than 1 billion people still have little or no access to electricity, and over 3 billion people do not have access to clean cooking. Clean cooking meaning cooking with electricity rather than with wood. Women and children are disproportionately affected by energy poverty. We must act, and we must act now. Now, there I just want to raise the question of, to what extent this is really a question of justice and not also one of market expansion. And all of this leads to my fourth point, which is about wireless technology. So I think my overall vision of what is going on is that we are transforming the world's resources into microwaves, amongst other things, which are harmful to life. And in order to do that, on the way to create these microwaves through which we then communicate or think we communicate, rivers are dammed and diverted, forests are destroyed, cultures are annihilated, just to keep us connected in this particular way, which of course, there is a big question mark around what that connection really is worth, or what that connection really is, and whether it really connects us. Already in 2010, over half of the world population had a mobile phone. And so mobile phones, Wi-Fi, satellites are creating these whole new waves in the atmosphere, and they also bring massive problems. Even the World Health Organization has classified radiation as a potential carcinogen. I mean, electromagnetic radiation. And there's an important report or initiative called Bioinitiative 2012, which has brought together a lot of the until 2012 very new research on the bio impact of electromagnetic radiation. And there is also Full Signal, a documentary that might be worth checking out. Again, to sort of end, what I want to point out is that underlying all of this is really many unexamined assumptions about progress, technological advances as improvements. which leads me back to my main work on subsistence and radical alternatives to current civilization. Because these are being undermined in so many different ways, in so many small ways. Subsistent life ways just become increasingly irrelevant because people have so much less access to the forest, to the means of subsistence, and not just wilderness, so-called wilderness, is being destroyed through these technological processes that we're witnessing at the moment, but also different lives for humans, yes, and so as the last, just to say that one of the implications is that this problem is also systemic. Then that it cannot be easily addressed by sort of individual consumer type choices of, I won't use the internet, because actually if you go shopping in most contexts, these goods will have arrived through a logistics company that is based on just-in-time technology, that is based on ICT. I mean, it's unthinkable to think of the way just our economy works outside of the digital. And in fact, all the dirty coal, everything actually runs into then producing the high, what we now call our high technology. Even if they are supposed to be clean, the whole process leading up to them is not. And we do not see any reduction in it. And yes, so what I was going to say is that we have a systemic problem here. We have a problem that is much larger than something that can be addressed by individual choices. Yeah, I'll leave it as that for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great, thank you very much, Linda. That was a great rundown on those issues. Let's just do a bit of Q&A and brief discussion, and then we'll move on.